Long before the NFL became a cultural phenomenon that draws tens of millions of viewers every Sunday, player acquisition in professional football was a chaotic affair. In the early decades of the 20th century, before the league had any uniform system for signing college prospects, teams vied for talent in a frantic scramble. Wealthier franchises could persuade top players to join them by offering lucrative contracts, while smaller market clubs were left picking over the remnants. Such an unbalanced process repeatedly led to lopsided rosters, which in turn produced uncompetitive games and dwindling fan interest. It was clear that if the National Football League wanted to thrive, it would need a more equitable approach, one that would ultimately reshape not only football, but American sports as a whole. In the midst of the Great Depression, a man named Bert Bell emerged with a proposal that would bring order to the turmoil. Bell, who co-owned the Philadelphia Eagles at the time, recognized that competitive balance was critical for the league's survival. Without it, marquee matchups became rare, and the weaker teams were perpetually stuck in the basement. During an owners' meeting in 1935, Bell floated an unprecedented idea: implement a draft system that would grant the worst-performing teams first choice of eligible college players, followed by increasingly successful teams in inverse order of the previous season's standing. In Bell's mind, this approach would spread talent more evenly, giving every franchise at least a chance to rise above mediocrity if it made smart choices and developed players properly. When the NFL draft was formally adopted the following year, few could predict how significant it would become. In 1936, the first-ever draft took place at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Philadelphia, with a modest group of team representatives selecting from a pool of college athletes who often had little awareness that a draft was even happening. There was little fanfare, no television cameras, no cheering audiences, and certainly no glitzy red carpet. Philadelphia, holding the first overall selection by virtue of its last-place finish, chose Jay Berwanger, a running back who had won the first Heisman Trophy at the University of Chicago. To the disappointment of the Eagle, Berwanger eventually declined to play pro football, choosing a different career path. The moment underscored that, in those early days, the NFL still lacked the allure and financial clout to guarantee it could sign top college stars. Despite such hiccups, the draft immediately revealed its promise. It prevented wealthy or well-connected clubs from monopolizing the best prospects year after year, and injected hope into fan bases that had long since grown weary of seeing their teams get pummeled weekly. Over time, as the NFL evolved, so did the draft. The selection process expanded to include more rounds, while scouts and front offices worked to become savvier in evaluating athletes. In a pre-television era, dedicated fans followed the draft through newspaper headlines, radio updates, and occasional press wires, eagerly scanning for news on whether their team had snagged a future star. By the 1950s, football was on the brink of a renaissance, propelled by a booming post-war economy and a growing national appetite for sporting events. College football was hugely popular, and a league that could harness the star power of college standouts carried immense potential. This was also the decade when television became an influential medium. Even though the draft itself remained a relatively modest affair, conducted in hotels or office meeting rooms, the NFL began featuring more games on TV, fueling a deeper hunger for the personalities and backstories behind these athletes. As the professional game grew more profitable, signing a contract with an NFL team became a legitimate and lucrative career path for the top college players. In 1960, the upstart American Football League, AFL, emerged, providing direct competition to the older NFL. For several years, the two leagues raced to sign college prospects, often resorting to cloak-and-dagger tactics and secret negotiations. Stories emerged of AFL and NFL scouts lurking outside dorm rooms, eager to ink a star player the minute he finished his final collegiate game. That period of unrestrained bidding wars highlighted the advantages of a stable draft system. Teams that followed the official NFL or AFL draft still needed to deal with the unpredictability of players' preferences, but at least the league itself had some semblance of structure. When the AFL and NFL agreed to merge, culminating in the creation of a unified draft in 1967, the modern era of player allocation truly began. Now, a single cohesive structure governed the selection process for every future rookie, ensuring no duplication of signings, no confused loyalties, and no competing war chests jacking up salaries. Under this new framework, the draft grew more intricate. General managers, coaches, and scouting departments conducted exhaustive research on prospects, traveling across the country to attend workouts, bowl games, and on-campus evaluation. For fans, the draft was still more rumor than spectacle, but coverage in sports columns and magazines hinted at a rising fascination. Who would become the next gridiron icon? Would the top pick truly transform a struggling franchise into a contender? The 1970s and 1980s pushed the NFL draft further into the limelight. As major networks like CBS and NBC expanded their sports programming, they recognized that audiences wanted more insight into the behind-the-scenes drama that shaped the league's future. Enter ESPN, which launched in 1979 as a 24-hour sports channel hungry for compelling content. By the early 1980s, ESPN began broadcasting parts of the NFL Draft. At first, the league's front offices were skeptical. Who would watch team representatives read names off index cards in a stuffy hotel ballroom? But to almost everyone's surprise, viewership proved encouraging, signaling a shift in how football fans engaged with the game. People were eager to track even the most minor details and transactions that could influence their favorite franchises. This surge in televised coverage soon created a new breed of celebrity, the college player on draft day. Cameras captured the reactions of top prospects, some at home with family, others invited to the draft site, awaiting a phone call that would change their lives. The drama of a draft day slide, where a player expected to be chosen early waited anxiously as teams bypassed it, made for compelling television. So did the jubilant hugs, tears, and exclamations of joy when a name was finally called. The broadcast personalities, led by figures like ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr., injected analysis and debate about each team's picks. Suddenly, the NFL Draft, once a closed-door procedure, had blossomed into a full-fledged media event. By the 1990s, it was no longer enough to broadcast the draft in basic form. Television networks introduced sophisticated on-screen graphics, real-time updates, and in-depth profiles of nearly every prospect, from major conference stars to small-school standouts. Front office staff became more guarded, using cryptic language and smokescreens to disguise their intention. Fans, too, became more informed and more passionate about the process, devouring mock drafts from sportswriters and discussing possible first-round selections on fan forums. Perhaps no aspect of the modern NFL best embodies the 365-day fervor of football fandom more than the draft, where speculation, rumor, and hope feed an almost endless appetite for content. In the 21st century, the NFL Draft is a prime-time spectacle, extending over multiple days in front of massive in-person crowds and national television audiences. Host cities treat it like a major festival, setting up fan zones, autograph booths, and interactive exhibits. The draft itself often spans 3 days, the tension-packed first round on Thursday night, rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, and the remaining rounds over the weekend. Television coverage is exhaustive, featuring multiple channels broadcasting parallel shows, each offering distinct commentary teams. Meanwhile, online streaming, social media, and podcasts provide second-by-second updates for those who want even more detail. For the league and its franchises, this monumental growth has been a financial windfall. Sponsorship deals, advertising revenue, and merchandising tie-ins abound. For players, draft day can be life-changing. A first-rounder might sign a contract with millions guaranteed, while a later-round pick faces an uphill battle to prove he belongs. And still, the essence of the draft remains tethered to its original mission, to grant struggling teams a chance to acquire talent and build toward competitiveness. Even the biggest cynic has to admit there is something inherently captivating about watching a cellar-dwelling squad select a superstar in waiting, holding on to the possibility that one player, or one class of draftees, might alter the franchise's destiny. Critics, of course, argue that the draft reduces players to commodities, assigning them to an employer with little say in their destination. Yet this structure has become so ingrained in American sports culture that few can imagine the NFL without it. Over the decades, the league has fine-tuned the balance between balancing competitiveness and respecting player rights, providing them with structured rookie contracts and the promise of free agency down the line. The evolution of the NFL Draft from a modest meeting in a hotel ballroom to a nationally televised, hype-infused spectacle reflects the broader story of pro football in America. It shows how a once regional sport harnessed media, tradition, and the allure of new talent to become an industry worth billions. It also underscores fans' endless capacity for hope. Even the most downtrodden fan base can dream that the next top pick is a savior, the missing link that will transform heartbreak into euphoria. Perhaps what best encapsulates the draft's ascendancy is the raw emotion on display each spring, when athletes walk onto a stage, often draped in their new team's cap, and embrace the commissioner. In that moment, their past hardships, the pre-dawn training session, and the intense scrutiny from scouts all converge into a single joyful instant of success. And for the team that picks them, it is an equally hopeful moment, a handshake signaling that the future just might be brighter than the past. The beauty of the draft lies in its duality. It offers structure and fairness to a league bent on sustaining competitive parity, yet it never loses the unpredictable charge of human drama. That delicate blend has sustained the NFL Draft for decades and will likely continue to do so for as long as fans remain transfixed by the magic of potential. Indeed, from the first overall pick in 1936 to the multi-day, prime-time event of today, the draft stands as a testament to the NFL's knack for turning ordinary processes, picking players, into a national obsession. Few ideas in sports history have proven so simple yet so transformative, bridging the once informal scramble for rookies and the modern-day extravaganza that enthralls millions year after year.